In music, the Andalusian cadence sounds awesome. Though although the name sounds sort of mysterious or complicated, the Andalusian cadence is actually very simple. So in this video, we're going to dive into the music theory behind this pattern, not only to learn how to play it, which is simple enough, but also exploring variations on this cadence to create a variety of cool sounds. So to begin, this chord progression has a minor sound to it. Some kind of epic romantic feelings are evoked by this progression, and you hear it in all sorts of songs. Some really popular examples are Runaway by Del Shannon. Slower take on the progression. It really builds in momentum as it goes. Then you have a faster example, faster tempo with Hit the Road Jack by Ray Charles. And then Hitchin' a Ride by Green Day is another example that's at a faster pace like that. All of these examples use the same shared structure, the Andalusian cadence. In a nutshell, the progression is minor 1, flat major 7, flat major 6, and major 5. So in the key of D, for example, the chords are D minor, C major, B flat major, and A major, or minor 1 progressing to a flat major 7, flat major 6, major 5, and then the cycle repeats, beginning again. So the idea is to take this 4-chord progression and then just repeat it from one measure to the next, and it creates the sensation of continually falling. There's this forward momentum, and we'll get into why it has that feeling, why it feels like it's cascading endlessly down this spiraling motion. But before we get into that, let's address the name itself, which can sound, like I say, a little confusing or a little exotic. Really, Andalusian cadence, the Andalusian of the name comes from this region of Andalusia in southern Spain. So a lot of flamenco music comes from this region, and it incorporates this cadence, and it has that romantic, like I say, epic sound to it. Now, cadence is a bit of a misnomer. Technically in music, the phrase cadence refers to a full or partial resolution at the end of a musical phrase. In the language of music, you can think of a cadence as being like a full stop, like a period, or a partial stop, like a comma, helping to stem the flow as a progression moves through harmonic space and through time. Though in this case, it's not a cadence in that technical sense. It's more of just this repeating cycle of chords that goes through the same cycle again and again. So the Andalusian cadence, again, is just a progression of a minor 1, flat major 7, flat major 6, major 5, and we'll look at what this means. Though the name and the symbols used to convey the pattern are a lot more complicated than the pattern itself, which makes sense through the lens of music theory. So I said before that the Andalusian cadence is based on a minor key or an Aeolian mode. And really what that means is the Aeolian mode is just a permutation of the major scale. So in this example here, we have the F major scale at the top. It goes through notes F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F, or notes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The major scale has a buoyant kind of happy sound to it. The minor key, or the Aeolian mode, is a permutation of this pattern beginning on the 6th scale degree of that pattern. So in this case, the 6th note is the D. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The 6th note of that pattern is a D note. And if we just play those same notes, but beginning and ending on D, it has a different sound, kind of a more melancholy or sadder sound. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 8. That's the Aeolian mode, and the Andalusian cadence is based on this pattern. So if we were to play the F major scale, it looks and sounds like this. Like I say, it has a happy sound, but if we begin that same pattern beginning on D instead, playing those same notes, the pattern takes on this sound. You can can already hear that it sounds a little more like the Andalusian cadence. But where do the chords of the Andalusian cadence come in specifically? Let's have a look. Starting with the minor scale, in this example, D minor, we have notes 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 8, or D, E, F, G, A, B, flat, C, and D. From this scale, from this pattern, we can derive 7 different chords, basically by starting on each respective scale degree and combining every other note in groups of 3 to come up with 7 harmonies. On a guitar, if we look at these patterns on the fretboard, they look and sound like this. We have a minor 1 chord, a diminished 2 chord, a flat major 3 chord, a minor 4 chord, a minor 5 chord, a flat major 6 chord, a flat major 7 chord, and then back to a 1. Now, looking at a keyboard, if we play this pattern rising, it looks like this. And falling, the pattern is 8, flat 7, flat 6, 5, 4, flat 3, 2, and 1. Notice that the top 4 notes of that are basically the root notes of the Andalusian cadence. That's the same pattern as. So if we play that cadence with chords instead of single notes, it's minor 1 to a flat major 7 to a flat major 6 to a major 5. Now technically we should be playing a minor 5 because in the key of D minor, the 5 is a minor chord. It's an A minor in this case. So if we were to play the pattern purely based on the minor key, it would be minor 1, flat major 7, flat major 6, minor 5, which doesn't sound as strong. Instead of this minor 5 or the A minor, we play a major 5. So we go from a minor third, in this case a C note in A minor, to a C sharp note, which gives the A major chord a much stronger resolution to that minor 1. Let's look at the same pattern in the circle of fifths and it'll make a little more sense. So on the chord map here, if we have the tonic F major, F Ionian, Ionian is a fancy name for a major key. D minor is in this grouping of chords in F major, but in that case, in the case of F major, it's a minor 6. If we want to make D minor the tonic or the minor 1, we just rotate the numerals so that D minor is the tonic, minor 1, and it's D Aeolian. Aeolian, again, is just a fancy name for a minor key. So the chord progression of Andalusian, the Andalusian cadence, is a minor 1, flat major 7, flat major 6, and then instead of going to the minor 5, A minor is within the grouping of compatible chords. We're going to play an A major chord instead. Now on the chord map, all of the major chords are in this inner ring, all of the minor chords are in the middle ring, and all of the diminished chords of a key are in the outer ring. So we could play the minor, as you just heard, but instead we play the major chord, which is the dominant 5, which has a strong resolution to the tonic in this case. So the progression has a stronger sense of forward momentum with that major 5. Minor 1, flat major 7, flat major 6, major 5, to the 1. And you could just repeat that pattern ad nauseum again and again to create, like I say, this endless cascade or this infinite falling sensation. As many songs do. In the examples that we just mentioned, they basically stick to the Andalusian cadence pretty closely. But you can play with this progression, you can play with this cadence to come up with variations that add more flavor and variety that can take your songwriting to the next level. So let's play with these variations to see what we can come up with. Though I should mention that looking at the chord map here, we could play the Andalusian cadence in the key of D minor, as we are in these examples, but because the patterns of music are cyclical and symmetrical, all keys follow the same progressions, the same patterns, we could play the Andalusian cadence in any key. So playing around with the chord map, you can explore those in other keys, but for these examples, we're going to stick with the key of D. And the first variation is really very close. The only difference is that we're playing a major 5-7 or a dominant 5-7 chord here, which is an A major chord. But instead of playing it as a plain old 5, we're incorporating this G note, which is the 7th note in that chord, and adds a little extra tension that gives the progression some added oomph. 5/7 chord sounds extra nice, and then to the 1. All right, let's play with the more variations. The next one is this third example, which is instead of playing a plain old flat major 6, we're going to play a flat major 6 7. So we add this A flat, which gives it kind of a bluesy sound when we hit that chord. So the progression is minor 1, flat major 7, flat major 6 with an added 7, and then major 5. The next example goes a little further off the beaten path. Instead of playing a minor 1, which is really what establishes the tonal sound of Andalusian with a minor sound to it, we're going to play a major 1, so a major tonic, in this case a D major chord. So it's D major, C major, B flat major, A major. Now, playing a 1 at the end there almost goes from this sad cycle of feeling kind of down to, oh, there's a bit of hope. The sun comes out, it's not so cloudy. Now, looking back at the original pattern of the Andalusian cadence, that sunniness, that sunny sensation of a major 1 comes from the fact that the tonic is a minor 1. So it has this kind of sadder sensation. But the rest of the progression are all major chords, which have generally a more upbeat or happier sound. So even though the majority of the chords, 3 out of the 4 chords, are major chords with a happier, more buoyant feeling to them, this minor tonic really kind of sets the general tone, hence the name tonic, of the progression. So by raising this to a major 1, we turn that frown upside down and give it more of an upbeat sound. That is definitely a departure from the typical Andalusian cadence, but like I say, you can play around with it to come up with some cool variations. Another variation on this general theme of the Andalusian cadence is to play a flat minor 7, so in this case a C minor chord instead of a C major chord, and it has kind of a dark sound to it. So we have minor 1, flat minor 7, and then a major, flat major 6, and major 5. So what is going on here with this minor chord for the 7? Well, if we look at the chord map here, everything we've been playing so far is in the Aeolian or minor mode to play the chords in this Andalusian cadence, with this 5 borrowed from over here. With the C minor chord, if we shift the grouping, we still have a minor tonic, D minor in this case, and we're playing a minor 1, flat minor 7, and then a flat major 6. With this flat minor 7, we're now in the Phrygian mode. So it's darker on the modal spectrum. And then with that 5 leading back to the minor 1, it kind of raises the mood, a little brighter sound to it. But generally, this variation is a little darker with a Phrygian flair to it. This next example omits a chord altogether, the 7 chord in this example, and just sticks to the minor 1, flat major 6, major 5. And it still has that descending sound of a D, B flat, and A. So it still has that descending, cycling, falling, cascading sound to it. So it retains the general framework, the general skeleton of Andalusian, but minus a chord. And it still sounds so good that you hear this in quite a few songs, including Sweet Dreams by the Eurythmics. Next example is the most adventurous that we're looking at here, which swaps out the flat major 6, the B flat chord, with an E chord, the major 2 7, which seems totally wrong, but we're going to look at why this works. But first, let's play it so you know what it sounds like. I'm going to play it down here, these inversions of the chords, so it's a little easier to hear. So it's a minor 1, D minor, C major, flat major 7, then an E major 7 chord, major 2 7, and then a 5. So how did we go from a B flat 7 chords and swap that out for an E major chord? In the Andalusian cadence, it's minor 1, flat major 7, flat major 6, 5, and then 1. So we went from a flat major 6 to this major 2 way over here. How does that work? Let's pull out the 7th version of the chord map. So it's the same structure. We have all of the major chords in the inner ring, all of the minor chords in the middle ring, and the diminished chords in the outer ring. There's just a little more detail to explain where this chord came from. So let's rotate the layers so that we're highlighting D Aeolian, the D minor chord. So minor 1, flat major 7, flat major 6, major 5 is the typical Andalusian cadence, but we're going to replace this flat major 6 with this major 2 chord all the way over here. Now, I talk about substitute chords and specifically tritone substitutions more in another video, but here the basic idea is to substitute any 2 chords. You just have to replace the chord with another harmony that includes 2 of the same notes, and that's the general rule. And in this example, you can see how the B flat 7 chord includes notes B, D, F, and A flat, while E major 7 has E, G sharp, B, and D. So you can just see it with the colors and shapes here. D and A flat, or the orange and blue squares, also show up in this chord. G sharp is another name for A flat, it's the blue square, and then D, the orange square, is in that chord as well. So if we take the B flat major 7 chord, it has a D and an A flat. Well, the E major chord shares 2 of those same notes, D and A flat or G sharp. So when we play the progression on the guitar, you can hear how B flat 7 chord and an E7 chord sound kind of similar. There's also another reason why the E major chord, the major 2-7 in this example, works. And it's because it also is a secondary dominant to the 5 chord. So in this example, we go from minor 1, flat major 7 to the 2, then the 5 and the 1. The 5 is the dominant to the 1 because from orange yellow to orange in the major ring, that's a 5 chord. But because we have a minor 1, it just resolves to the minor 1 there. In this example of E to A, E is also a dominant to A. It's a secondary dominant because it's not the dominant chord, it's a secondary dominant to the tonic. And so by rounding through those chords, there's a nice harmonic progression. The circle of fifths is beautiful in the way it's structured and explains the relationships between these chords. And then as one last point, the examples we've been using here have been swapping out or substituting chords in the Andalusian cadence, sticking to only 3 or 4 chords in this progression. But we can also inject or insert chords between those in the Andalusian cadence, using the Andalusian cadence as a general framework for a progression, but then adding more variety and nuance with other chords. So you'll hear this in songs like I Will Survive, that it has an Andalusian kind of sound to it, but expands on those chords with some other harmonies injected as well. There's a lot to explore with the Andalusian cadence. It's a very cool chord progression. And for you to explore this pattern at your own pace, you'll find a link to a PDF in the video notes. So thank you for watching. Please let the algorithm know if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one.